So first of all, let me congratulate, of course, the organization. I think it's very important to have a conference called Consumer Protection Conference. I think on a European level, it's very important to have this. And so thanks for the invitation. And it's really, of course, a pleasure to be with you today. As Carol mentioned, for EIOPA, consumer protection is in our DNA. And I can assure you that it will continue to be a key strategic priority from our side. It is at the center of our work, and both through prudential, but also conduct of business regulation and supervision. Our objective is to ensure that market players put in place sound governance mechanisms, have a robust solvency position, and ultimately treat customers fairly. Our aim is to protect consumers from unfair and abusive business practices by identifying tangible risks at an early stage and to ensure that these risks are adequately tackled before fully materializing. Our approach is to promote the orderly functioning of the markets, resulting in a level playing field, healthy competitive environment, and increased consumer confidence, while of course guaranteeing stability of the markets. In my intervention today, I will touch basically three main points. Firstly, I will focus on EIOPA's strategy to strengthen conduct of business supervision. In the second part, I will elaborate on our current activities that I'm sure will bring tangible and positive outcomes for consumers. And finally, I will conclude addressing one of the most important challenges that we all face nowadays, the digitalization age. On my first point, our strategy to strengthen conduct of business supervision. We talked before, and we've seen in the panel before, talking about Solvency II implementation and of course all these consumer protection element on which Solvency II is of course one of the main elements. And we recognize, of course, that from a supervisory perspective, the prudential supervision, it's still done in some different ways around Europe. Now, if you look at conduct of business supervision, the difference and the fragmentation, it's much, much, much higher. So we live in a world where in Europe, the conduct of business supervision is highly fragmented. And it is at different stages, I would say, of development as regard the approach to consumer protection in the different member states. But I think we all agree that an effective and efficient conduct of business supervision contributes to credible deterrence of possible market misconduct and allows for preemptive and proactive supervision by acting before a developing issue becomes widespread. This is the spirit of what at EIOPA we used to call preventive risk-based conduct of business supervision. To act before you need to be a fireman. There has been significant reputational and financial damages as a result of consumer mis-selling events in all the financial sector in Europe. Gladly, not in insurance, not with the dimension of our friends in the banking side. But still, we have, of course, a number of examples throughout Europe. And this, of course, had led to material loss in consumer confidence in all the financial market, compounded by, of course, existing information asymmetry and a lack of financial education of consumers. This is something that is very problematic to deal with. In order to ensure transparency, simplicity, accessibility, and fairness across the internal market that provides good and right outcomes for consumers, we have developed a strategy to strengthen conduct of business supervision. Traditional approaches as regards the conduct of business regulation and supervision used to be focused on disclosure, selling practices, and were following, I must say, a more tick-the-box approach. These proved clearly to be insufficient, in particular in preventing mis-selling, but also created the foundation for a culture of formal compliance. So, firstly, we believe that it is of the utmost importance for consumers and for the European Union as a whole to move away from such a tick-the-box approach. The aim is to create a consumer-centric culture which goes beyond compliance, a culture where undertaking senior management need to take on more responsibility to prevent poor product oversight and misaligned incentives for sales staff. These two elements were at the genesis of some of the mis-selling situations that we have seen throughout Europe and need to be overcome. To strengthen conduct of business supervision, EIOPA is using a number of tools, such as thematic reviews, to target specific financial activities or products causing consumer detriment or creating a barrier to the effective functioning of the market. Furthermore, we will be gathering information on emerging risks to consumer protection by using retail risk indicators and identify market areas that need to be monitored. The implementation of retail risk indicators, let me be also very clear, will be gradual and proportionate. The idea is not to collect floods of information. The idea is to be gradual and proportionate. In first instance, we are focusing our attention on four main elements: commission rates, lapse rates, claims ratios, and consumer complaints. These will be the basis for our retail financial risk indicators. The joint analysis of these key indicators will help us to identify potential sources of consumer detriment and detect areas that could warrant further in-depth attention. Furthermore, EIOPA will also continue to publish our annual consumer trends report and, of course, doing ad hoc surveys to provide a snapshot of existing cases of consumer detriment in the insurance and pension markets. And I really believe that this is fundamental to overcome this huge fragmentation that we have on conduct of business supervision throughout Europe. By giving the example at the center, at EIOPA, together with the national authorities, I think we can make a lot of progress in terms of seeing more convergence in this area and developments, of course, happening at the national level. And believe me, I think that this is fundamental also, not only for consumers, but also for the insurance industry. Because if you just deny that there are issues that needed to be tackled, you will not solve them. You know, first thing is to be aware and to have, of course, the initiative to tackle yourself. And that's the approach that we want to follow. But of course, supervision can give a good incentive for these problems to be tackled and solved before they materialize. That's our approach. Coming to my second point, our current activities and significant projects that we believe will bring tangible and positive outcomes for consumers. And let me start with the IDD, of course. Last week we submitted our technical advice on possible delegated acts to the European Commission on the implementation of the IDD. We consider this advice to be a significant milestone in further promoting consistent consumer protection across Europe regarding the distribution of insurance products. We recommended concrete policy proposals on issues such as product oversight and governance, conflicts of interest, inducements and assessment of suitability and appropriateness. Our overall objective is to ensure that the interests of the customers are taken into consideration throughout the life cycle of the product, that distribution activities are carried out in accordance with the best interest of consumers, and that customers buy insurance products which are suitable and appropriate for them. In the area of product oversight and governance, we used our preparatory guidelines issued last year as a basis for the advice. We recommend that manufacturers of all types of insurance products establish processes to ensure that all phases of the production cycle are undertaken having consumers' needs in mind. And we also recommend that this needs to be implemented in a proportionate way. And let me say one simple thing in relation to POG. Since we started to discuss these issues on product oversight and governance, I hear very often from the industry the point that, why are you doing that? We already have this implemented. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not what we're seeing. There's a lot to do still in this area, and it needs to come from the top. It needs to come from the top management of the companies to make sure that since the beginning, when you start to develop the products, you have a consumer attitude in your mindset. Because at the end of the day, that's not only good for consumers, that's also good for you. Consumer-centric business is the business of the future, and insurance needs to be a business of the future. So please take this positively, use it to your advantage. Our advice further defines potential situations in which conflicts of interest may arise between distributors and their customers in the course of the distribution of insurance-based investment products. Distributors are required to take appropriate measures to prevent, manage, and as a measure of last resort, to disclose conflicts of interest to avoid any harm to customers. Let me now turn to the much discussed topic, the famous inducements, third-party payments. And we all know, of course, that this area politically was defined in IDD in a different way that it's defined in MiFID for the securities market. Our advice specifies the criteria to assess whether inducements have a detrimental impact on the quality of the service to customers. Our starting point was that a detrimental impact occurs when an inducement is of a nature and scale that it provides an incentive to carry out the insurance distribution activities in a way which is not in accordance with the best interest of the customer. And let's all understand that there are situations where this is reality. So this is not something theoretical. It is then fundamental to identify all criteria to assess if and when inducements are considered to have a high risk leading to a detrimental impact on the quality of the relevant service to the customer. The purpose of these criteria, which include practices such as quantitative thresholds and upfront commissions, and which are based on concrete national supervisory experience that we gather at EIOPA, is to provide guidance to the market on when the detrimental impact might occur. They are not and should not be considered, as someone call it, a blacklist. That's not what we have in our advice. In addition, we are well aware of the legislative decisions already reached on the IDD. So these criteria do not amount in any way to a de facto prohibition on the receipt or payment of commissions. Furthermore, let me tell you that from my side, I've got an impartial view on the business models of insurance distributors, and I'm not advocating the establishment of a fee-based distribution over a commission-based distribution model. But it is very important not to shy away from this issue, given the national experiences that we have and the crucial aspect of adequately protecting consumers when purchasing insurance-based investment products. Finally, on the technical advice, it is important for insurance intermediaries or undertakings to gather the appropriate information from their customers from the conduct of appropriateness and suitability assessments. This approach helps to ensure that insurance intermediaries or insurance undertakings do not request more information from the customer than needed to provide good quality advice to the customer, or information requests are not duplicated. Another significant project within the overall work of EIOPA on the IDD is the Insurance Product Information Document, the famous IP that it was mentioned this morning. And I must say that I'm really proud of this work that the colleagues have done and of the consultation and the improved, I would say, final result that we sent to the Commission. The objective of the IPID is to ensure that the customers have the relevant information about a non-life insurance product to allow them to easily compare between different product offers and to make an informed decision. We developed a standardized template for this IPID where the key features of non-life insurance products are presented in a simple and easy to understand question and answers format. Importantly, the proposed design takes into account how information will be presented via digital media. For instance, by allowing the layout of the information to adjust on the small screen of a mobile device. It is based on extensive consumer testing and on the input from different stakeholders obtained via public consultations. This is a big step in making a difference for consumers. Consumers who typically might not read lengthy pre-contractual information will now be empowered to compare different non-life insurance products and to make informed decisions. To finalize on the IDD, the implementation with the IDD requires a stronger and more effective supervision of the intermediaries' activity. And this is needed throughout the EU. In Austria, for example, where we are, my opinion is that appropriate consideration should be given to reinforce the powers and the competencies of the Financial Markets Authority on the supervision of the intermediation activities, which are now quite fragmented. And this is not only the case in Austria, it is also the case, for example, in Germany. Definitely a move in this area would be fundamental for the good supervision of intermediation activities following the implementation of IDD. My last topic, the challenges of the digital era. Fast evolving technologies are changing our lives, the way we communicate and purchase products. Industry and regulators need to constantly adapt to the global environment in which consumers live. These changes will namely have an impact on the whole value chain: insurers, intermediaries, distributors, and service providers. We will see business models being threatened and new entrants implementing business models that will dramatically reduce the traditional frictional costs of the industry. The use of big data and telematics, comparison websites, automated advice tools, the Internet of Things, all that things that you know, will impact the way providers interact with consumers. The increasing amount of personal data available and the power of data analytics will inevitably change the insurance underwriting models. We need to be aware of potential risks associated with big data, such as access issues for consumers being classified as undesirable due to the abilities to undertake more and more granular analysis. Big data on the one hand and digitalization overall on the other hand will also bring a number of benefits, both to insurers and to consumers. Better analytics means companies can profile customers in order to personalize products and services, enhance their own internal processes, and improve their fraud detection capabilities. This change has the potential to produce better outcomes for customers and better management of risks of fraud situations. In December last year, EIOPA launched together with the other two European supervisory authorities a public consultation on big data to address this phenomenon and invited all stakeholders to share their views. So I hereby invite you to make use of this consultation and to provide your feedback, which is out there until mid-March. Existing European legislation on data protection, competition and consumer protection, which share the common goals of promoting economic growth, innovation and the welfare of consumers, are relevant for insurers, but they are not explicitly addressing big data. Therefore, further steps in this area are probably needed. After the consultation period is closed, EIOPA will decide in this area if something else from a regulatory or supervisory perspective is needed. This year, EIOPA will also organize roundtables dedicated to InsurTech. The first of these is currently planned for the end of April. Our objective is to learn from different stakeholders about the evolutions in this field, the benefits and the risks for the industry and consumers, and the potential obstacles to good innovation practices. In particular, EIOPA wants to evaluate the impact of digital technologies in the insurance value chain to gain a further insight into InsurTech startups, big data, consumer analytics, and of course, possible impacts on cyber risk. It is of the utmost importance to EIOPA that consumers' expectations and behavior in a digital economy will be adequately captured and their rights fully respected. Ultimately, this will contribute to the development of a regulatory framework that promotes the highest standards of consumer protection while not hindering innovation. In conclusion, today is more important than ever to ensure that the European Union respond to the real problems and concerns of Europe's citizens. The lack of public confidence in the financial markets needs to be overcome. And at EIOPA, we are working together with all the national supervisory authorities to strengthen supervision throughout Europe and to ensure that all policyholders are protected by high-quality supervision. And this is not theory. This is practice. We have been involving, of course, supervisory authorities throughout Europe in a number of exercises in situations of cross-border services where things have not been so successful, if I must say, to learn the lessons, to understand what needs to be better done from the supervisory community. We have been involved in, together with some national authorities, in what we call balance sheet reviews. See Mishu in there. We have done it in Romania together with the authority, and recently also in Bulgaria. And I really want to make a clear statement on this, that we see these exercises as really fundamental to make sure that there is progress in the market, also on consumer confidence. This ultimately, it's fundamental for consumers, but it's also fundamental for the market. There's no way that the insurance market will flourish without credibility. And the aim of these exercises, which I understand sometimes are difficult to digest, but the aim of these exercises is to bring confidence to the market and credibility to supervision. And I'm quite happy of the results that we have been achieving, and I see these exercises not as a end of a journey. I see them as a start of a journey where we will continue, of course, together with the national authorities, looking and monitoring the developments and making sure that the credibility of the market will be there, the credibility of the supervisor will be there. Because, ladies and gentlemen, we are in an internal market. So the quality of supervision in one country, it's not anymore an issue for that country only. The quality of supervision, the quality of the way that doing business in one country, it's a European Union issue, because we are in an internal market. And if we want to reap the benefits of an internal market, and we should, because we're not taking full advantage of the internal market, we need to make sure that both market practices and supervisory practices are definitely consistent, more convergent, and credible. And this is the challenge that EIOPA will have for the coming years, and this is a challenge that makes me alive. We are definitely committed to continue to make a difference for consumers of insurance and pension products. The internal market should not be a partial reality for European consumers. The products offered to them should be fair, and consumers should have appropriate information for taking informed decisions. We will continue to lead the way in promoting the highest standards needed to protect consumers of insurance and pension products, while embracing good innovation that delivers better outcomes to citizens. To implement sustainable choices and to develop a consumer-centric mindset, we need the involvement and the support of the industry and of the consumers. I am quite confident that together we will make tangible progress, and we will turn challenges and risks into opportunities. Thank you very much.